Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Cookiecast. Today my conversation is with the lovely Leanne Davies' mum, Donna. Me and Donna had a wonderful conversation, and it was such a good conversation that this is being broken into 2 parts. Aren't you lucky people? So this is part 1 of the conversation I had with Donna, where we had a lovely chat about podcasting, bit of TV, movies, favourite movies. And then in part 2, we talk about all sorts of good things. So have a listen to part 1 and then tune in later for part 2 of Cookiecast with Donna Davies. Right, podcast time. Let's do this.
Let's do this.
Okay, so the one thing that I don't tell people before I get them to come and do a podcast is that I give them the idea of the questions, but I always start by asking them a question that puts them on the back foot to sort of ease. Because what I feel is that the first part of it is that people get sort of relaxed and they know what questions are coming and things like that. But to spice things up, I generally ask a random question to start things. So, Donna Davies, Leanne's mum. What's it like being Leanne's mum?
Leanne is an incredible person to have in your life. I don't know, obviously she's my daughter, and I can only hope that however she has grown and developed as a person has been down to myself and her dad. And I can only be very proud of the person that she has become. She's my daughter, and I'm obviously going to be very biased, but yeah, an amazing person to have.
I can happily second that. So, I asked you to come and do episode, let's call it episode 5. It might be episode 6. It depends how I edit all of the podcasts together. I asked you to come and do an episode of the podcast. Do you know what a podcast is?
No, if I'm honest. I've heard it used. I listen to Radio 4 quite a lot, and they will mention that, but I have no real understanding of what a podcast is, so you might want to sort of give me a brief explanation. So
podcasts are like, the easiest way to describe podcast is it's radio on demand. It seems to have a following of sort of partially famous people are the big heavy hitters. A lot of comedians do a lot of podcasts. So it's kind of an outlet for stand-up comedians and general sort of people who work in the comedy genre, whether it's films or TV or stuff like that, to sort of, I don't want to say stay relevant, but they can do something weekly. Some of the top ones are Joe Rogan, who's a UFC commentator, but he's also a stand-up comedian. Bill Burr, stand-up comedian. Kevin Smith does about 10 different podcasts a week. And he's...
So when you say stay relevant, it's... instead of them sort of just disappearing off of the scene and maybe doing tours or things like that, it's a continuum of what they're doing, so somebody can listen in regularly.
Yeah.
And they're not losing that. They're keeping the audience engaged all the time.
Yeah.
Or for as long as people are interested to listen.
I saw a George Carlin interview where he, very early on in his career, he ended up massively in debt because of poor management, and he basically built this sort of way of working where he would do a stand-up special, which would be televised, released on video and stuff like that, to get people interested to go and see him live, to pay back all this tax, unpaid tax and stuff. And it was just this perpetual loop of you tour, you build your material, you do a special, the special goes on TV, more people want to see you out on tour, so more people go and see you when you're on tour. And he just did that for a very long time. And then by the end he'd paid off this humongous debt he'd accrued. And it's that kind of, like these stand-up comedians, it's not exclusively stand-up comedians. Another popular one's Scroobius Pip's distraction pieces. And I mean, by trade, he's a rapper. So it's, I don't know, the BBC, Brian Cox does one, The Infinite Monkey Cage, and that's like science and stuff, things like that. So there's lots of different people that have lots of different interests, and it is, unfortunately for me, the biggest growing sort of market out there at the moment. Probably outside like social media and stuff. You've got your YouTubers, your Twitch gamers, and your podcasters, and that market is just growing and growing and growing. So I'm trying to get in on it now to try and become.
But also with that, because there's so many people with so many different views, it's bringing something different into it each time, isn't it? Because there's just so many things to be discussed or talked about, or just have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of one of the biggest reasons that I started doing this, other than my obsession with podcasts, was that I found that I was spending my days and the hours in the day with people that were very passionate people, who were very passionate about the things that they love, whether that's coding computer programs or wrestling. You know, it's people are very passionate, and you don't have to be into what that person is into to find their passion for it almost intoxicating. You can get drawn in if somebody's very passionate. And I got sort of almost at a point where I was quite obsessed with it, like working with people and spending time with people and doing projects with people, and these people were all passionate people, and thinking when you were talking to them and going, in any other given situation, I could sit here with a cup of coffee anywhere and listen to this person talk about this subject. And one of the main reasons that I wanted you to come and do the podcast was that we've had those situations where we have sat and had a cup of coffee in a coffee shop and talked for hours on end about various different things. And I think we would both be considered to be quite passionate about certain sorts of things, music and TV and film and stuff. And that's what the podcast is supposed to be about. So I thought we'd sort of get together and do a podcast for, I don't know, like I say, it's like episode 5 or episode 6 or something. So there is a bit of a standard format. I'll ask you questions that I've asked other people before, and then we'll get all of those initial questions out of the way. And then if you become one of my regular guests, we'll start talking about all sorts of random things, I imagine. At some point I'm going to do like a mental health month where I get like all of my previous guests on to discuss various different mental health things and all sorts of things like that.
I think that I could be quite passionate about that just at the moment.
Yes, mental health is big on my list of things at the moment. So let's get the ball rolling. What are you watching TV-wise, like on TV? And when I say TV, I think people understand in this day and age that when you say TV, it's not BBC One or Channel 4. It's generally your Netflix, your Amazon sort of stuff. But I mean, I know people do still sit down and put the TV on.
To be fair, I think probably at the moment, and I don't very often rate British humour, British comedy. It seems to fall into a particular category of farce quite often without being funny. But there have been a number of comedies that I have watched of late, very well written, and sometimes I think, should I actually be laughing at them? One of them is Damned, with Joe Brand and Alan Davies. And it's a really serious subject of social care for children But within that, there's obviously an element to all social services, and certainly don't want to sort of be berating anybody. But when a job is really so serious and the consequences within that role to the protection of children, there has to be something where they find the humour, just to create a bit of alleviation in such a serious role. So that's a TV programme comedy that I've been watching currently, which has been quite funny. It's got some very serious storylines, but it's the characters within that bring the humour. It's not the actual stories that are funny. So the characters that are portrayed within this social services office bring the humour into what you're watching. Another British comedy, and I don't know whether comedy is even the right word, is Mum. And again, it's reality, I suppose, where a storyline is written based on perhaps that person's experience, or maybe a friend has told them how they are at home, and so this comedy, this story has been put across, and it's incredibly poignant. Sometimes there is really no humour in it, but there is a sense of, I don't know particularly what it is, but the whole half hour there is something that you do laugh at, but it's family life. It's a mother, her son, his girlfriend, the mother's brother, his wife, and the mother is a widow. She's got an old family friend that comes to visit, and obviously there's a development of their relationship, and then the relationship that she continues to have with her husband that has since died, of the mother and father there. And sometimes it can be quite laugh out loud, and other times you just want to cry. But it is wonderfully written. And then another comedy that is funny throughout for me is Ben Elton bringing political satire through Shakespearean written comedy into today's understandable sort of humour, and just the way he writes things. And
I didn't realise that Ben Elton was still doing stuff. I mean, I know I remember the 90s when he was very, on TV all the time. He always had some show. I'm pretty sure there was a Ben Elton show.
Yeah.
And then I know that he was writing a lot.
It's Upstart Crow is what the programme's called.
Okay.
And that was obviously, I can't remember all of the characters, and bearing in mind Shakespeare was in the 14th century, I think. I apologise if my history facts are incorrect. But it's a follow-on, really, when he did Blackadder.
Yeah. And
we had the satirical comedy coming through there, and it's very similar, only it's David Mitchell as the part of Shakespeare, and yeah, that one is really quite funny, naturally funny. It's not underlying humour, it's full in your face. Enjoyable.
So it's a comedy route then at the moment?
Yeah, and maybe that's obviously something. You go to work, you do what you do through each day, and sometimes you just need something to break up all of the tensions that have come about. I'll either sit and watch a good film, and quite often comedy films they don't always do it for me, but a half-hour comedy show is just what you need to sort of break up any tensions that have built up. It's enough for me.
One of my biggest loves in this world is stand-up comedy. It's up there on my list of top things that I enjoy doing, and that, like you say there, that you've had a bad day, you need something to remove that bad day from ruining your evening. You don't want your bad day to turn into a bad evening. Stand-up has always, for as long as I can remember, been that huge part of my life, and I know that there are certain things I can put on at the end of a day and go, my day is better now because I've watched this. It was awful while I was at work, or it was awful for whatever reason, but that piece of stand-up has made it better. So I can fully understand the injecting comedy into your day.
I think that's it, because if I leave work, I mean, work isn't always difficult. In fact, hardly ever is it difficult per se, but the environment that I work in, there can be a lot of sadness within that. But it's not wanting to sort of, as you say, really finish the day on a low. You want to sort of finish it on a little bit of a high. And I don't mean that I want to go to bed sort of hysterical with laughter or anything like that, but certainly just want to feel that you've gone in a positive mood, so that, I suppose, when you're trying to fall asleep, that positivity, that calmness, that more at ease with yourself.
Yeah, it's like lightening the load, I suppose, by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand that. Like I say, comedy is something that I will always try and inject into my life just to bring it up a few notches.
I think, I mean, last night, and it wasn't a purposeful thing, but I ended up watching about an hour of Sport Relief, and that went from showing images, incredible sadness, and it's so hard to believe that these things are still happening in some of the really poor countries of the world. So they would show these images, and it sort of flicked from that, and it wasn't purposeful, but obviously they're trying to create images to make people want to support the event, to Michael McIntyre doing his midnight interviews with people that he barges into a room, and last night was Andy Murray in a hotel room. Knock at the door. Well, they didn't even knock at the door, they just let themselves in and turned the light on, and he's fast asleep and having to answer questions, probably not quite like this, but it managed to raise a laugh from me. I actually donated my own donation, I'm not going to quote figures, and Andy Murray answered his questions, raising £56,000, I think, towards Sport Relief. Awesome. But again, you've got all of those sort of bittersweet, poignant moments suddenly thrown in with humour, and that 45 minutes was just a real, I won't say it was a good experience, because obviously it is sad to think that there is so much...
I suppose it's all the stuff it's tied to.
Yes, yeah.
So on that downer, we can now move on and move away. I generally do a sort of what movies have you been watching recently sort of bit. You got any standout films?
I've watched 3 films over the last 3 nights. I do like my films, and I don't always get a good one. But started off, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday. What day are we on now? Saturday? Yeah, Wednesday, watching Eye in the Sky with Helen Mirren and Alan Rickman. I think it might have been his last film. And I would certainly recommend that to anybody, and it just gives a real fascinating insight, I suppose, into how possibly as a country, and whoever's written that film have written it from their perspective, so I can only take that perspective from the film, but about counter-terrorism and what goes on, and it was just, for me, a real eye-opener, very interesting, very edge-of-the-seat film to watch.
Because Eye in the Sky, I immediately go, CCTV, and then you just work your way up, like CCTV, drones, and then spy satellite sort of thing. So.
And probably very much like that, but it's the drones probably are a big part of it, as are it's sort of an international thing, but they used something probably about as big as a big beetle. I don't know what to I'm not going to use that horrible word. That flies, like the rain beetles, something like that. And there was a camera fitted into it that they used to sort of hover over, so that whoever it was hovering over didn't necessarily think that there was somebody invading their area. They would have just thought there's an annoying fly or something. It just, it was a good insight for me, as I say, but based on whoever's made the film, their perspective, and that's all you can take from it at the time. There are other words I could possibly use, but I don't know how serious these podcasts are, so I'll just... it was a good film. I would recommend that to somebody to watch, even if I don't know these people.
Okay.
And then last night I watched quite a light-hearted film, and I think I just really enjoyed it because of the age of the characters. It's Michael Caine, Alan Arkin and Morgan Freeman. I can't even think now what the film was called. Going something or other. But they had all worked for the same steel company for 30 plus years. And the steel company, I believe, was going into some kind of receivership or being bought out by another company. And their pension was being ignored. Ignored isn't the right word. The pension was going with the company, but they didn't want that responsibility, so all of these people that had since retired were losing their pension. So they decided to hold the bank that was responsible for the takeover and do a heist on it. It was very entertaining, but just enjoyable, because they must all be octogenarians at least. They might not be.
I can offer you Going in Style.
That might be the one. I don't know how old Morgan Freeman is, or Alan Arkin, but they're certainly late 70s. But it was just a good feel-good film. And I think because of their ages, to know that they're still acting, and they've got all of their marbles. They obviously are well stimulated mentally, and even physically they still do quite well to want to consider robbing a bank. And that was sort of portrayed in the film as well.
I think he will be 71 this year. The magic of the internet, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so that's two films.
Yeah, and the third one was something a little bit deeper, and I do quite like these films, and I do particularly like Australian films as well. And this one was Porno, as Pawno, and it was all about the characters that go into a pawn shop. I don't know, it was just a lovely film. You really got sort of involved with the characters. And it had the drama, it had the tragedy, it had the fun element, but just really pulled you into each of those characters, and probably would make you want to shed a tear, but feel that they were all doing what was right for them at that time. So if somebody wanted to have a film to watch, those would be the three that I've watched. I would recommend to anybody to watch any one of them.
Out of those three, if you could only watch one of them again, which would you pick?
I think it might have to be Eye in the Sky, because there's I don't know whether it's referred to as an espionage film.
I was going to say, ooh, a bit of espionage.
Yeah, and sometimes those films, there's always something, in any film I suppose, there's always something that you miss. With espionage, you sort of want to be sort of right in there thinking, I need to watch that bit again. The other two, the Going... What was that film called again?
And back to the internet we go, ladies and gentlemen. Going...
Where would we have ever been without this?
Going in Style.
Going in Style, yeah. That was a very light film. It was nice, but it didn't need too much focus, too much concentration. The porno was good. I could probably watch that again, but I think Eye in the Sky, just because of the espionage element and maybe how it could potentially impact on any of our lives anywhere, then it's a good one to watch again.
So I generally dip in to tell me your 3 favourite films. However, recently I've had a conversation with a friend of mine who said it can be quite a wider question than I think it is. I say, because I was like, you can't ask the same person the same question twice. You can't say, tell me your 3 favourite films, and then a week later say, oh, tell me your 3 favourite films, because presumably the answer would be the same. And the conversation I was having with my friend was saying, I don't agree, because my 3 favourite films change.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like somebody says to you, pick your 10 favourite songs or 10 favourite albums, and music, films, to me, I like music. I'm very mood orientated. Yeah. So I like to watch a particular type of film dependent on my mood. And dependent on what mood you might catch me in, I could give you 3 different films. I think if you were asking me what a favourite film was ever, I don't know if I've got the right title. Is it Limitless?
The Bradley Cooper?
Yeah. There's something that absolutely fascinates me about that film. And I think it's just how we could all have that opportunity, if we had that opportunity, to be able to reach our full potential. That film, for me, is what that is all about. And yes, obviously it's about something that he's taken, but also you can view it from a different angle of, is he having to take anything to reach his full potential?
When I was younger, when I round sort of even at school age, I learned about this sort of, we only use, is it 6% of our brains, and that question of what would happen if we used 7-8% versus what if we used 96% of our brains, and what would we achieve then? And there are various different theories around. You could work out how to defy gravity and then be able to fly. You could work out how to transform into something else, and all these different sort of things. And it's been explored in various different ways. There was a truly awful film called Lucy that also went a little bit down that route.
I quite enjoyed that. Was that Scarlett Johansson?
Yeah, I've never felt a film go downhill so fast.
I think sometimes they do sort of make these films on the back of something else and hope that the person portraying that character is what will carry the film along.
Yeah, it was very much, we've got Scarlett Johansson. That's what that film felt like to me. It was like, we've got Scarlett Johansson, so there you go. And it was like, okay, have you got anything to back that up? But yeah, Limitless. Limitless is one of those films that I find I can just watch. I can watch it and then it doesn't have to be a long time later. I can watch it again, and it's not. I have this sort of genre where I would say to people, it's not the best film ever, it's not the worst film ever. It just slots in quite nicely into this. I could watch it, and then a little while later I could watch it again. And then a little while later I could watch it again. There are some films, I've seen films in the last year that are films that everybody's raved about, and I've watched it and gone, at this point in time, I might never need to watch that again. Even though you could say, oh, that was a good film, but I might never need to see it again. There are some films you watch and go, my word, that was truly awful, and I never need to see it again. And then there's you've got your blockbuster, you've got your big movie that costs hundreds of millions of dollars to make and everybody raves about it. But how many times would you watch that film versus something that you can just put on and watch and go, yeah, that's an alright movie. I didn't mind that. I'd watch it again. And Limitless is a film I've seen a good few times and would quite happily watch again.
I don't know whether it was something to do with Bradley Cooper, but they serialised it.
They did.
He was in it,
and he was in it, yeah,
as a different sort of character.
Yeah.
And I think once they'd serialised it, the film element that I got from that was lost. It was an interesting... I think what they tried to do with it was okay, and I watched it each week, but I suppose it loses some of the originality that it had as a film.
Mm-hmm. There's one thing about Limitless that... Because I sometimes worry that when I go, well, that wasn't explained, or that's a bit of a hole, whether I'm just not intelligent enough to actually understand what happened, because obviously there's a lot going on in Limitless. But I always feel there's a big plot hole, because there's the question around whether he's killed the woman in the hotel that's never really answered.
Yeah.
They just go, yeah, we're just going to leave that there and move on. And they just leave it on the table and walk away. It's like, he might have killed somebody, he might not. You will never find out. We're moving on. And it's like, did we get an answer to that bit?
I do find quite often, if I'm watching, especially police dramas, that they'll do something, and I'll quite often think, I'm sure that they shouldn't be doing that, and why haven't they even questioned them about this? And maybe my vocation at some point was to have been a crime, somebody who solves crimes, a bit like a Sherlock Holmes, not actually going out there and doing the police work, but just knowing that there were certain things you could put together and think, yeah, that fell into place, that fell into place, and that fell into place. And I can't give you a specific programme at this moment in time, which is terrible, because I'm trying to explain something without giving you any facts. But there are just these times, and I suppose you've just got to sort of think, right, somebody's written something and they've written it really well and they've put all of this together, and just that one minor element is what I'm focusing on, and I need to look at the bigger picture. But isn't that just life in general? We always end up focusing on the minor element that needn't have bothered us as much as it does. But going back to what you were saying about blockbusters, there is another film, there's a lot of films really that I could say have been favourites, and quite a lot of years ago, maybe 35-ish years ago, there was a film called The Wild Geese. And many years ago as well, they used to do a big blockbuster, but it was a blockbuster because it had all of the major stars in it and they worked well together. And I think Where Eagles Dare might have been one of those types of films.
Yeah.
There would be loads of them, but Wild Geese was Richard Harris and a number of other stars of the time. And that film, for me, I wanted to watch it so many other times, but I only wanted to watch it so that it would have a different ending, and that was never ever going to happen. I loved that film. It just really, but I'm not going to say anything too much, but I only ever wanted to watch it because I wanted it to have a different ending.
Wow. There's a film, I believe that there is a series of films out there that, again, it's a film that falls into the category, not the best film ever made, not the worst film ever made, up towards the top end of the scale for me personally, in that it's very close to being the best film ever made. But I sort of said, it's not the best film made, but it's the most perfect film. It has absolutely everything you could want. It has all the different things. It promotes the feeling of things. And there's a film called Serenity, which was a film made off the back of a TV series that had been cancelled that was called Firefly. And the movie, in my opinion, is as close to perfect as you can get, apart from the fact that it is crushing towards the back end, because not wanting to spoil anything, but they kill off probably one of the most beloved characters, like, because you go from the series to the film, and at the end they kill one of the characters, and it's truly crushing. And like myself and various sort of friends and stuff did that kind of, you watch it so far and then you just want to turn it off so that person doesn't die, because it's just so crushing when it happens. It's like, no. And it's not even the very end. There's still a chunk after that, but you have to watch the rest knowing that that's happened.
Is Serenity, it's not a sci-fi type?
It
is.
Space cowboys.
Right. I think
Cowboys
that
in
I
Space.
could probably watch that on Sky. I'm sure I can.
It's great. It's just...
And if I haven't developed that rapport then with that character, it perhaps could, from the series, it could have quite a different impact on me.
Potentially, because as a series and as a film, there was like main characters, and then there's like supporting characters, and everybody's got their, it's a group of people. So you've got your main character, and then your other main character, and then you've got these sort of next shoot down of the sort of main supporting characters, and then the next shoot down you've got your supporting characters and stuff. So everybody has their own little bit. It's like the Avengers. It's not a Hulk movie, it's not a Thor movie, it's the Avengers. So everybody has to have their little snippet. So I suppose if you watched it and you hadn't seen the series, you might not have that. Like you say, that sort of kinship with that character. But it's still pretty brutal.
But as well, I'm sure that naturally is something that happens watching the film, because we can even develop a rapport with inanimate objects, can't we? Like Wall-E, for instance.
Wall-E.
And the Transformers.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had that thing when like binge watching a TV series, where the characters in that series become your friends. Yeah. And then that series ends, and it's like, well, I want to spend more time with my friends. Ray Donovan for me has been one of those. Certainly recently, I binge watched Ray Donovan, and this is a much longer story than we have time for today. But I then was actively watching what was then the most recent series, and all I kept saying to people was, I just cried through every single episode of the most recent series, because it was like, this is brutal. Oh man, I can't believe what's happening. I'm not going to say any spoilers, but I literally cried through every episode of that final series. Not the last series, because there is no.
And I think with that series as well, the people portrayed, the characters are all very. A lot of it's set in a boxing club, so it's very manly men. Does that make sense? Yeah. Very male orientated, and you don't expect to have that sensitivity sometimes. But that's a bit maybe a harsh generalisation, because I know that there are a lot of sensitive men out there, and we're all open to emotions.
I think I'd seen something recently. I'd certainly had a conversation while I was at work recently. This sort of the men don't cry principle. And I was having a conversation with a girl at work who was dragging women kicking and screaming back to the 1950s with phrases like, I'm supposed to be more emotional, I'm a girl. And I'm like, oh man, wow. And my response was, right, and? Well, I'm emotional. I'm a girl. I'm supposed to cry and stuff. I was like, I had a cry yesterday. It was awesome. I felt great afterwards. What of it? Because I went through a good 30 years where I was a child. You're allowed to cry as a child. And I was actually having this conversation with a mate of mine who was the person that said to me, you're 13 now, you can't cry anymore. And I went, is that a thing? Is that really a thing? And I was having this conversation like 2 weeks ago with the same person. I was like, you told me I couldn't cry anymore. And he was like, did I? I was like, yes. You said you're 13 now, you can't cry anymore. And then that was it. You're a man, so you're 13 and you're all the way through to 37 and going, oh, men don't cry. And then, I love a good cry. Sometimes you need a good cry.
I think life, generally, we're just programmed.
Yeah.
And you don't realise that until suddenly you get to an age and you think, actually, I don't like the program that was put into my head. I'm going to remove it replace it with another one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been something that very much come up in that sort of, you're told how you're supposed to be, you then push down that path, but did anybody ever ask you if you were that person?
Yeah, or did you want to go down that path?
Before sending you off, down that route. And it's like, hang on a minute. I remember all the way back to going, well, I'm not that person. I don't want to go down that route. Read that reprogramming of the mind to get back to sort of more how you want how you want yourself to be, sort of thing.
I know this is probably a little bit of an odd thing to say, but it was only the fact that you've mentioned your age. That you'll thank me greatly for this, Cookie. You're going to be 40 in the same year that I'm 60. It's only just over 2 years off. But just think of all of the fun that we can have.
Oh, yeah. So there's this ongoing conversation at work at the moment because the guy that I sit next to is going to be 40, like a couple of months after me. A guy that sits a couple of desks over is going to be 40 in the next week or so. And there's my mate Rob, he is over 40. There's a couple of people around our age. And the question of when, as a man, you get to the age of 40 and certain procedures that need to be undertaken, and that conversation has arisen at work. So I'm very, very much in that zone of,
I'm the procedure that you have to have your ponytail cut off?
No, I'm growing my ponytail to donate it to charity.
Good.
I decided that one of the things that I do really well in life is grow hair. So I'm now turning my hair into a charity. So I'm going to grow 6-inch ponytails, cut them off, send them to the charity that make wigs for children who have cancer and things like that, that need hair. And I'm just basically going to become a hair factory. I'm going to be a hair farm, and I'm just going to send ponytail after ponytail after ponytail to these people until my hair decides that it's going to give up, or they tell me they don't want grey ponytail. Children don't need grey hair, because unfortunately there is the percentage of the white hair is sort of starting to take over a little now. So yeah, 40, that's going to be amazing. Yeah, I can't wait. Not looking forward to that particular procedure.
It'll be fun. I think I was doing, when was I doing cartwheels? Was that my 40th or my 50th? Can't remember. Anyway, I'm already discussing with my friends that we're going to walk the Amalfi Coast for my 60th.
Nice. I'm going to go to California and rent a soft top, ideally Mustang, and drive Route 66. I'm going to cash in all my shares and just fly to California, rent a soft top car, drive Route 66, and that's me for 40. Treat to myself for all these years of quote unquote hard work.
Well, indeed. And you've got to feel like, we live in a huge world, We can't. I quite like living in a bubble, but I do know that there's a big world out there, and I've seen bits of it. There is a lot of it to see, so just go out there and see it. Live your life.
So there you go, part 1 done and dusted. Donna Davies, part 1 of Cookiecast. Tune in just a matter of moments to listen to part 2. Part 2 is a little bit longer than part 1 because we had a really good conversation. Got a little bit of vinyl and 70s music on the go. If you want to give us a shout, you can hit us up on our Facebook page, which is Cookiecast. Give us a tweet at CookieCastPod, on Twitter that is. Or you can email us, tell us what you think's going on. Do you like the podcast? Do you not like it? What do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? Email us at cookiecast.pod@gmail.com. Hey, we've also got a new addition. We've got our little Instagram account that has absolutely nothing on it at the moment. I'm going to start putting pictures of our podcast guests up there with their permission, hopefully. But at the moment, there's very little there. So I'll keep you posted on that one. I'll keep checking up and see if I can get some pictures up there. So have a look at that over the next few days. Okay, I'll see you for part 2 in just a moment. Bye-bye.